Disclaimer. For this video to actually work, you're gonna have to lower the playback speed to 0.25. I promise it will make more sense moving forward. Thanks! It's summer break, no school, so I've had this funny idea of trying out the YouTube algorithm. Basically, the main focus of this series is that the video is sped up to the point it's not understandable in normal playback. But yet, once you slow it down, it's actually a normal YouTube video. Now, I know I'm not the first person that did this, so shush, but I'm actually practicing video making and editing this way, but also making videos that seem rather low quality, even though they're in fact very much HQ, if you know what I mean. At least I hope they are. Anyways, let's begin. The other day, I started watching Hunter x Hunter, which, by the way, new anime review might come out soon. I just want to see it to the point where I could actually make a quality review on it without looking up other people's opinion. But yeah, in one episode there was a moral question. If you could save only one person, who would you save and why? Your daughter or your son? Now, in the anime, not gonna spoil anything, but it had its own unique answer. But that made me think, that's a really tough question. A few days later, I searched up the exact question online, but I sadly couldn't find anything. The only similar article I could find is a tough choice between choosing your spouse or your child. There was an essay where the couple had been asked who they would save if they had to choose. The wife chose to save the kids and answered it with zero hesitation. The husband, on the other hand, hesitated. Why, you may ask? Well, the way he explained it is that it's a moral taboo to love your spouse, or anyone in matter of fact, more than your children. But in his case, that was actually true. No matter how much thought he gave it, he'd still want to save his beautiful wife more than his children. Keep in mind that this article was written in 2012. Not only that, but the article mentioned some famous, in quotes, celebrities and writers who had also admitted to loving their spouses more than their children. Now, this brings up the big question. Is it wrong to love your spouse or your partner more than you love your kids? I mean, there's a likely chance that you have formed a much deeper connection with someone you're with than with your own child. Just a heads up that the next part will be my unique explanation and vision on this. I am not a psychologist nor someone who had studied how the human brain works, nor am I someone who cannot claim that I am 100% right. I'm probably not, lol, but it's still an option, right? Therefore, I will be dividing it into two parts. The first part will be the overall, more logical explanation, and the second, a more in-depth analysis of the question. Firstly, I'd like to clarify that it's almost impossible to know how someone will react in a certain situation. So questions like this also can and cannot be categorized as heavy moral questions. Why? Well, let's say you have a hero who had been brave 10 times in a row, but runs away the 11th time. It wasn't something everyone expected, but yet it's still an outcome that can happen. And this is why I'd like to say that questions like this are practically useless and statistics do not have to have a realistic impact on the outcome. Just because someone had answered it one way when they were asked does not mean that they won't change their opinion when asked again, nor if it actually happened IRL. This is also because of the impulse and adrenaline that will occur in certain circumstances. Not only that, but many abiotic factors make it almost impossible to predict them. It's the same as if asking a person who would they'd save if two people were hurt in a car crash. It all depends on the level of danger their life is, and if one of them had a higher chance of surviving if you help, and the other is in a much more critical state, meaning that they're doomed either way, of course you would choose to save the less hurt person. But like I mentioned, these are not to think as moral dilemmas, and in most cases they are made up by people who have never been in a critical situation where they had to choose one less bad option. On another note, if we are discussing the man's answer of loving his wife more than his children, that's another story. I think that loving your partner more than loving your kids is actually possible and perhaps even more present than the vice versa of it. Why? Well, for starters, you know your partner more than you know your kids. And I do understand that this doesn't have to be the case with people who are divorced and have a new partner, but I still think you understand and know the partner more than you know the kids, simply because of one thing. When kids are born, they aren't really born with a unique opinion on something, or rather, they aren't really born as someone who is capable to think for themselves, at least for their first few years of their life. And in those years, it's on the parents to teach them about the world, what's happening, even morals, but I'm not going to go too into depth with that. Basically, kids' opinions are merely formed because of the opinions and beliefs of their parents and surroundings, which doesn't really make them as someone who is capable of gaining an interest of a much older individual. By that I mean, no matter how old your child is, well, for this experiment, I'm focusing on the age of a child that is still minor because I'm not too sure if it were the same case if we were talking about a grown-up child. You still do not know them to the core, or rather, you do know them, it's just that they do not seem as an interesting individual for you to have some kind of deep conversations or deep connection. They're kids at the end of the day. But on the other hand, doesn't it seem a bit more preferred to save someone who is younger? I mean, the world depends on them after all, but life isn't in optimal surroundings, so even if you were to save the child, who knows, maybe they could have had a bad faith afterwards. Either way, no matter what way you approach this question, it is almost impossible to think of a solution for it to be right. It's unique and depends on every situation, meaning that answering it one way now doesn't have to mean that it will be the way you will react when it happens or the next time you are asked the same question. Just some fun thoughts here and there, but that would be all for this upside down episode. What are your thoughts on it? And what do you think about this topic? Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. A comment would be very much so appreciated, and it really does mean a lot. That would be all. Goodbye.